Welcome back to the AIM podcast. This is a very special episode. I'm here with my good friend, Derek Dalzell, who is the Senior Manager of Education at COROS. Derek, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to it. Can't wait to start chatting. Yeah.
Let's do it, man. I'm super thankful for you guys. Just to let the listeners know. So COROS was very kind to send me an incredible watch. I've got the Vertex 2, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Which is it's one of their top line products. It's incredible so far. I've been training with it for a while now, and I'm going to be using it for my 50-mile race, which is this weekend. This podcast will air on this Thursday, and the race is Saturday. So Derek and I are just going to have a great chat. We're going to talk all things COROS and how I can better use this watch to help my performance in the race, and also just the importance of training with technology, which I think people get a lot from, because people ask me all the time, like, what watch do you use? Or, I'm getting into running, like, do I need to be tracking it? So hopefully this episode will be very insightful for the listeners.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, the Vertex 2 that you got on your wrist, show it off for the camera. Let's see
Yeah,
it.
let's go.
Yeah,
This thing
there we
is
go.
sweet.
Yeah.
Orange band.
Yeah. So that,
Awesome.
just to plug the watch real quick, obviously it's one of our top of the line products, but you actually get 140 hours of GPS use out of that watch. So for
Wow.
your ultra coming up, no worries at all. You could even start with 20% battery life. You'd still be good.
Dude, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to know. So I'm really excited about that. And dude, I think what would be helpful, Derek, is before we even dive into the fun stuff with COROS, I would love for the listeners to just get a quick kind of overview of your background in sport, and then also in coaching, and kind of how you got associated and connected with COROS.
Yeah, sure. So just like everybody in athletics, I guess, I grew up playing sports, played baseball, hockey, football, my entire life. Thought I was going to go pro in baseball, didn't work out. And so I was watching a YouTube video the day after my last baseball game, right? I'm watching a YouTube video of Kona Ironman, the World Championships,
Let's
and a
go.
38-year-old won. And I'm like, I was 23 at the time. I'm like, I have 15 years to do this. Like, I'm going to be a pro athlete. So I dove in 100% to triathlon and cycling. And I actually went back to school for it to learn about human performance, because I was pretty serious about it. I really liked it. And yeah, that was way back in 2013. So 10 years ago, I started going back to school, human performance. I started coaching, really getting into the numbers, the data, the stats around performance. And for the last 10 years, I've been coaching globally with data and virtual training. And I did that for the last 10 years. I was a college coach, a private coach,
Wow.
coached everybody from beginners to elites. Yeah, pretty much all the way up. And a job opened up at COROS 2 years ago, asking for somebody to come in and help build out a coaching platform and a training philosophy. And I knew that they were a tech company. They wanted to utilize data. And I was like, oh man, I've really been trying to identify a way for me in my career to have a global impact. And so now I get to come into COROS with my data mindset and my coaching background. And now, instead of coaching privately or at the college level, 25, 30 people on a team, now I get to take this message globally to hundreds of thousands, to millions, to one day, hopefully billions of athletes globally, and help them improve their own performance through data and technology.
That's incredible, man. It's been really cool for me as an outsider to see the growth of the brand over the course of time. Like, my background's in basketball. I played college basketball, but the first thing I did when I got out of playing basketball was trained for a marathon, a full marathon. And so that's kind of when I got to put my head into this space and started to learn the different brands that were, creating products to help people with their training. And, through good friends, Brian Mazza, Eric Hinman, some people I've shared with you, like, I've seen the COROS brand continue to grow and build. And quick shout out, my girlfriend actually is a track and cross country run at Western Carolina, and she is very more engaged with the running community, which obviously you guys are working with some of the most elite runners on the planet. So yeah, man, it's super exciting to see what you guys are doing, and obviously we'll continue to do, which I'm sure you'll share some more vision about in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to get into it. Dive right in. Um, I know you have a big race coming up, so I'm sure you have quite a few questions. And maybe, you're the host, but maybe we can utilize your use case to showcase some of these opportunities for everybody listening.
Let's do it. No, I love that. I want to dive into that. But maybe even before that, your background's super exciting and really cool to hear. What is, kind of, for people listening that maybe don't know a ton about COROS, like, tell us a little bit more about the actual brand, maybe some of the products, and like just some of the things you guys are working on from a high level. And then we can kind of bring it in and talk more details.
Sure. Okay. So first and foremost, we're a GPS watch company. Okay. And so we have, competitors in the field that many people know, but we specialize in building out watches for specific use cases, right? So the watch you're wearing right now is a Vertex 2. It's for our ultra marathoners, it's for our backpackers, it's for our expeditionists. It has a ton of battery life and dual frequency GPS, so you're never going to get lost. Your watch is never going to die. You're going to get all the metrics you need to improve performance. We have going backwards, we have the Apex line, which is built for like our trail, road, like agility athletes. Think of Kilian Jornet, that's his signature watch. And then the Pace 2 is probably our biggest like impact watch globally. It's really designed for road runners. It doesn't have mapping and navigation, but it's the lightest GPS watch on the market, and you can get it for $200 US dollars. And so that's the watch that somebody like Emma Bates, Molly Seidel, Eliud Kipchoge, the entire NN running team, like that's what they wear. And so first and foremost, GPS watches, right? But what COROS is trying to do, and really the bigger impact overall, is we are trying to position ourselves as the leaders in training and the leaders in the industry in training. And so like, Garmin, Apple, Suunto, Polar, they all make good GPS watches. And when you walk into a retail store like REI or Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever, you're going to see all these watch options, right? But nobody does training the way COROS does, and the entire training solution, right? So the metrics on the watch, the app on your phone, and then the desktop version that I just showed you on your computer. Like all those are value adds. There's no subscription base, and everything's there to help both the coach and the athlete dive in as far as they want to dive into the performance that they're seeing day in, day out.
It's super interesting, and that's incredible what you guys are doing. So first off, congrats. I guess the question I would want you to maybe touch on a little bit more is, since I've started kind of my running journey, obviously I'm not just a runner, and I'm not professional by any means. I do high rocks, CrossFit, lift, run. I kind of more in the category of, I guess, a hybrid athlete. But I have gotten a lot of questions of people that are getting into running. What watch to wear, why should I track, my runs? Like what kind of is the importance of that? So could you touch on maybe like the importance of having a wearable or some sort of data to utilize and kind of go over as you're training throughout your process?
Yeah, sure. Everybody thinks like if you're a runner, oh, they're going to track their miles or their time, right? Or if they're like into weightlifting or high rocks or CrossFit games, they're thinking, well, they're just going to see how many reps or sets they did, right? But there's a metric that goes across all activities. So whether you're running, cycling, lifting, playing soccer, playing basketball, right? Like windsurfing, climbing, there's a metric called training load that we have on our watches, which is essentially looking at your heart rate, so your intensity, over time, right? And so it doesn't matter what activity you're doing, our watch is going to monitor how stressful a workout was on your body. And then when you start adding in your strength training sessions with your pickup basketball games, with your 8-mile runs or 3-mile runs, whatever you run, like this number now goes across activities and gives you a far more robust understanding of how stressful was my week in terms of physical activity. And like you would be shocked at how many like programs, how many sports, or how many athletes just overall don't understand that you can actually measure the stress on your body, and they think it has to be quantified in miles or distance or weight lifted or whatever. But your body is undergoing stress all the time, right?
Totally.
And so at COROS, we have a way to measure that so that 1, you don't overtrain, 2, you stay injury free, but 3, most importantly, like you're making progress across the board.
I love that you bring that up, because this is even, before we started recording this episode, we were chatting about all these different metrics, which I'm excited to dive into more intentionally here in a second. But when you talk about the strain and just like that whole metric, I think it's super fascinating just to like account for all the other variables that most people, if they're not kind of like have their eyes open to these things, are probably not thinking about. But like yesterday, for example, for the listeners, like I was in Columbus, Ohio for the Arnold Classic, which is an annual fitness event. Hundreds of thousands of people come to this facility, and there's booths, there's brands, there's obviously competition, and you're on your feet talking, walking around all day long. My diet was not on par, not to mention the frequency at which I was eating was not probably proper. I was definitely dehydrated. And then I spent the majority of the yesterday afternoon traveling. So when I got up for my run this morning, I went on a hour-long zone 2 run. I felt terrible. and would be interested to see if we kind of unpack that run, even just kind of what those numbers like reflect. Because in my mind, I knew my heart rate was relatively low. I think it was 148 or 9, well, high 140s. But I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good. And I'm sure a lot of those factors, like you mentioned, kind of come into play when that number is presented.
Yeah, so I definitely hear what you're saying. I want to be honest to the listeners, right? Like we at COROS, we track everything from the moment you hit start on the watch until the moment you hit stop in terms of training load. What right of what I just noted in terms of gauging stress. There are other metrics in terms of like your sleep duration, your calories that you burned, your steps that you took. Those are all part of our daily activity within the app that you can see day in, day out. The train load metric is not going to be based off of that. It's going to be based off of your physical activity specifically. But to your point, like if you are a very educated athlete and you understand that you're at the Arnold Classic, right? And you had 20,000 steps and you only got 5 hours of sleep. Like now you do have that information on your app to make those like to identify that, right? Now when you go into your zone 2 run today, you're going to be thinking, man, like I'm going to be carrying a lot of fatigue from yesterday. Like if today was supposed to be a key workout, you got to move that to a different day because your body's not going to be ready. So like big picture here at COROS, we have all your daily stats and you would have to look into that. It's all there for you to see. Then training load is from your actual physical activity and it's measuring the stress from actual like athletic movement.
Sure. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I'd love to share more about some of the other things that you guys track because again, so I am the first to say I'm a surface level runner. I'm getting more into it. I think endurance is really fascinating, similar to you, seeing different guys, especially, at an older age, compete and dominate that sport. It's definitely interesting. And obviously with the nature of the brand of this podcast, ambition in mind, like I think people that go out for these aggressive feats of endurance definitely have a lot of ambition because it requires so much grit. So I'm definitely interested in that. So I want to get more involved and understand get more educated on the data. So maybe if you could share more about, the different other things that I could be tracking as well in terms of, all the different things we were chatting about before the episode, like cadence and some different other things I should be aware of.
Yeah, sure. So just while you were speaking, I pulled up your data because so Doug shared his access to his data through our training hub coaching link, which is available to all the coaches. So I pulled up your data and I can tell you that yesterday your resting heart rate spiked 10
Really?
beats per minute. So that just shows the level of fatigue you're at.
Totally.
So that brings me back into this answer, right? So one of the metrics that you should be looking at day in, day out is resting heart rate. That essentially shows how well your body's recovering day after day. And so yours this morning was 10 beats higher than it normally is. And so that would have told you straight away going into your zone 2 run, like I'll be able to do this, but I'm going to feel like a higher level of perceived exertion, right?
Totally.
The other metrics that I would really call out in our platform are base fitness and fatigue. And so base fitness is super cool, right? So you have a race coming up Sunday, this weekend, Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday morning. Yeah.
Okay, so Saturday. So it's not super relevant for you right now, but as you go into your next build, base fitness is your 42-day average of training load. Okay. So like if you know you want to build for an event in October or August or something like that, your base fitness should be climbing month over month over month if your training's actually performing, right?
Sure.
We have a metric within the app and the training hub to ensure that athletes are actually making progress in their training and not just getting stale and hitting a plateau. The other thing that would be relevant to you is your fatigue, right? So as you taper into events, everybody hears this key word called taper, and they probably just think
What's
that means
taper? I'm just
take
kidding.
like 4 days off and eat a lot of pasta. Like that's just what people think, I guess, carbo loading. Well, so if you've been tracking all your workouts, then you can actually you can see how your fatigue starts to level off and even like you get more fresh as you back off the days leading into the event, right? And
Totally.
again, this all comes back to that training load number, which COROS does automatically for you. But for example, say you've built your base fitness up to 100, right? And now your fatigue is at like 80 and it's Monday and you race Saturday morning. Well, you need to get your fatigue all the way down to like in the 20 to 30 range, which is our performance zone. And so
Wow.
what you would do is you would schedule out workouts Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you would essentially use our AI, right? Our artificial intelligence to see, hey, if I run 5 miles a day, what's my fatigue going to be at Saturday? If I run 3 miles a day, what's my fatigue going to be at Saturday? And so
Mm.
you can start to do these predictive modeling of your fatigue, your fitness, everything. I know this is pretty nerdy. I'm really nerding out right
No,
now, but
keep going. I love this. I think this
I'm
is very valuable.
I'm telling you, man, if you dive into it and you really allow the system to learn who you are and you use it, you will never miss a taper ever again. And you will always get fantastic performances in terms of just preparing your body and being ready for the actual demands.
Dude, that's so cool. I think it's so cool to kind of dive into this stuff. And obviously, I'll be the first to say with this particular challenge, Lucas and I are running this race together. This was something we wanted to do to challenge ourselves. Obviously, physically, it's going to be incredibly physically demanding, but really mentally as well. But as I would love to continue to grow with you guys and better understand these metrics. I mean, we have things kind of slotted throughout the year. After this, we'll do High Rocks World Championships in Manchester, England at the end of May. So that'll give me a really nice kind of window to really kind of dial in and understand those numbers better, which will make me a better athlete. So I'm pumped to see that.
So I actually have a tip for you
Please share it.
because
Yeah.
high rocks is like 800-meter repeats, right? Running.
Yeah, it's yep, a thousand sorry, it's 1,000 meter intervals. It's 8,000 meters of running broken up with 8 workout stations.
Okay. So
Run a
1K
thousand
repeats.
workout. Exactly.
Okay. Okay. I was talking to Eric Himman about this the other day and he was giving me the gist of it. So,
He's a beast.
all right. So I was looking at your data before this call, right? We were going over it, basically identifying some interesting trends. So you run at 160 cadence. Okay. And for the listeners, the COROS watch does all this for you automatically. You don't have to do anything. Like
Said
it
start.
tracks all this, right? So we were looking at your runs and 160 cadence, which tells me that you're using a lot of muscular force, right, to cover the distance. And the speed that you run, your stride length far outweighs your cadence, which tells me you're activating muscles, you're using a lot of muscle glycogen, a lot of energy, right? A lot of muscular force. And so for something like high rocks, where you have to run and then you have to do lifts and then run and then lift,
Yeah.
you are absolutely sabotaging your performance because you're using far too much muscle on your runs. And so think about it this way, right? Elite runners are going to run at like a 180 to 190 cadence. And because that, like they've basically trained their body to be efficient at that cadence, it uses less muscular force. It relies more on your cardiovascular system and your turnover. And so for you as an athlete, like if I were coaching you, I would basically say for the next 6 months, let's focus on your turnover because the higher turnover we can get from you while maintaining the same stride length, you're going to run faster, but you're going to save your muscles for the actual lifting portion of high rocks.
That's super interesting. Now, with that, like you say, focus on your turnover. Are there other things that kind of come into play there? Is it like obviously more zone two training or just trying to like be more conscious, being lighter on your feet? Like what are other things that kind of go into that, into the cadence?
Yeah, so cadence is almost like a neuromuscular function. So it's your brain sending a message to your legs to move faster, right?
Yeah.
So what I coach a lot of junior athletes, and I love coaching junior athletes because they're so like you can really mold them into the athletes they want to be, and they're very receptive. Um, so what we do with our junior athletes is we it's so silly. It's just so it sounds so silly, but you remember playing like the ground is lava when you were a kid, right? Or
Yes.
like don't step on the cracks, you'll break your
Hmm.
mother's back, stuff like that. So all this is doing is it's teaching you to be light on your feet and pick up your feet really fast. And you don't have to be running fast to train your brain. Like you could go out for your zone one active recovery runs and set cadence on your watch to beep at you if it's lower than 175, right?
Wow.
And go run at like 10 minutes per mile, 9 minutes per mile, whatever's easy for you. I don't know. But run at an easy pace, but tell yourself, I'm going to have a cadence of 180, right? And it would be just like speed intervals. Like your brain would get tired. The muscular signal like will fatigue. So you'd want to do like 10 by 1 minute repeats. But then over time, you go from 10 by 1 minute to, 5 by 3 minute to, 6 by 4 minute to 2 by 8 minute, whatever. You
Sure.
basically elongate out your intervals. That's how you train the body. And so your lowest hanging fruit as an athlete is your cadence. I can already tell you straight away. And so instantly I would be factoring this into your easy run days
Wow.
So it didn't take away from your key sessions, but it was training your brain and your body how to actually run properly.
Yeah, I definitely want to dive into that because I think that's fascinating. And when you compare the guy you compared me to, or you said elite runners, I know you mentioned a name earlier when we were speaking, but these guys are professional runners. Like they're the best of the best. They're just very, very skilled, talented endurance athletes. Do you think my cadence might be lower coming from a basketball background and just, I've never been a runner until kind of now I'm kind of getting into that space. Like, do you think that's where it kind of comes from and never, I guess I've been trained to properly run with good turnover, stuff like that?
Yeah, you're a power athlete, right? It's
Yeah.
like me being a baseball player or hockey player. Like we are built for explosive power. And so the longer distance you run, the more important it is to be efficient and have better running economy. So like if you were running 400 meters, I would still tell you it's far too low, right? But like you could get away with it, just because you're going to utilize all your muscular force. But yes, your background definitely plays a big role in this. But that's not to say that you can't change over the course of 6 to 12 months pretty easily, because this is just focused training. This is not one of those things where you need 10,000 hours to become a master. I actually don't even believe in that philosophy. I think that the key to success is focus training. And so if you actually put your mind to it and you dedicated, 6 to 8 month block of mixing in these intervals and making it a priority for you, you're starting from so low that you would get up to 175 to 178 pretty quickly.
Yeah. It's kind of like the philosophy, like work smarter, not harder, like really tap into all that the watch offers, all the technology you guys put out there and really, I guess, use it to your advantage. Cause I'll be honest, I'm so excited about this episode, really selfishly, because I think this will give me more insight of how I can train. And obviously anyone listening will take this and benefit from it. But up till now, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I look at heart rate sometimes, but really just pace and time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of how I've done it. And so, yeah, getting more, I guess, is just taking that next step. If you want to become a better athlete, data is so important. And I think just like COROS is obviously a piece of what we're discussing now, but just the whole idea of like incorporating more knowledge into your training as time goes on and we have more access. I think this is where you'll see a even greater separation of athlete to the people that are more dialed into the science and the data and the numbers and the technology versus people that are just showing up, working hard and training, like you were saying.
So this is what I tell my junior athletes that I still work with, right? Is throughout the course of a competition, and you know this from being a college basketball player, you'll have probably about 500 like split second decisions that you have to make, right? Like, should I go left real quick? Like, should I go right? Like, am I, well, all these different things. And so the more educated you can become as an athlete, the better your chances of making the right decision every single time. And so I love the movie Moneyball, as you can imagine, because it essentially brings in odds and percentages into sports. And so what we are doing through coaching at COROS with Training Solutions in our educational department, which I lead, is we are trying to educate athletes to make the best decision like day in, day out, but on all those micro levels as well. Because the better your decision making, right? The more likely a successful outcome is coming your way in a race or event. And so a lot of people, like you said, focus on pace or like, oh, I need to push my body. I need to push my body, all these different things. Like, yeah, there's a time and place for that. I'm not coming here to tell you that there isn't, but we want to educate you on what you should be focusing on when, so that, at your next high rocks competition, when your legs start burning from doing squats and you have 1,000 meter repeat and your next station's deadlifts or whatever it is, and you're like, oh my gosh, my legs are already trashed. Now, after this episode, you're going to be thinking, you know what? Let's focus on turnover here. My time will be what it is, but I'll get to the deadlift section with fresh legs now because I gave my muscles a chance to recover.
Dude, that's so cool. That's super, super fascinating. Definitely want to take that into consideration as I continue to go down my athletic journey. You mentioned pacing, and this is a question I have for you that I think will be helpful, maybe for this particular challenge have next, which is this 50-mile trail run. But on the watch, it talks about, it gives you your actual pace, gives you your time, but it also gives you another metric, which is your effort pace. So
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about what that means. That's something I've been kind of like looking at, I'm like, oh, what does this mean? And then seeing I guess the difference between what that is number and what my actual pace is when I'm going up and down hills.
Yeah,
How does that play?
I was hoping you bring that up because I was I'm looking at your data as we talk.
Yeah, it's super
And
cool.
so um I didn't realize this about Raleigh, but it looks like you have quite a bit of elevation in your normal trail run.
Yeah, so Umstead's where I run, guys, for anyone listening. It's a trail system. They've got all kinds of trails. They've got hiking trails, they've got running trails, biking trails, they've got like multi-use like horse trails. People ride horses there. But the particular path I went on today, and I've done this similar or done the same path multiple times, it is very, very hilly.
Okay, yeah. So you're gonna love the effort pace metric because what it does is it essentially makes every trail a flat road in terms of what your pacing would be on the flat road. But COROS takes us one step further. Okay. Anybody that is educated listening to this podcast is like, oh, he just explained running power. Oh, he just explained grade adjusted pace. Right. Both of those metrics are limited to running efficiency. And they don't factor that in very well. And so what COROS has done is we utilize your historical biometric data from different runs on flat terrain to now identify when you're running uphill at certain efforts, this is what that would be translated to on a flat road.
Gotcha.
Okay. And so this is why that matters to you, is because you said it's a 50K or a 50 miler.
50 miler.
Okay. It's a
Yeah.
long ways. So realistically, you can only operate in your aerobic base zone efficiently at that distance, right? You can get aggressive and start running like tempo or maybe threshold. I'm telling you right now, the more you run threshold, the more likely you are to like not do well. Okay. I'm just telling you
We're not going to do that, at least out the
that.
gate.
So unless you're being really strategic, right? If you know there's only like a 5-minute spike in terrain, like maybe you can power over it, but that will come back to bite you later on. So this is why effort pace is important, is you have training zones in your COROS app. And I'm looking at them right now. And so your aerobic endurance zone is 716 to 814
Okay.
per mile. Okay. And so that is really where you should be running the majority of your race, but not with just pace, with effort pace. Because if you tried to maintain that pace going up a 15% gradient, you would be pushing your body way harder than you ever should be, right?
Totally.
So effort pace is going to normalize this all out for you based off your own historical feedback from the watch. And so what you should be looking at as an athlete running this Saturday is your effort pace, and you want to be between 716 to 814 pretty much the entire time.
Gotcha. That's super interesting. And I actually have a friend, which I think you'll like this breakdown. I've got a buddy, his name's Banks Burke, so I'll give him a quick shout out. But he's gotten kind of into the trail race and the endurance space, and he actually took the race that we're doing, which is the Marin Ultra Challenge in San Francisco, and he looked at the entire course. So over the course of the race, we're going to be climbing around 10 to 11,000 feet of elevation gain, and he actually went a step further and broke it up. And so it looks like right now our steepest climb is around 13% for a 2.5 mile stretch. That's going to be centered pretty directly in the middle of the race, which is going to be pretty wicked. And then we've got, I think, 3 to 4 hikes that build up to that point that are much lower. And then we have around 6% grade, and then we have some hikes on the back end. But yeah, like you're saying, that's going to be really good to know, especially once we hit that middle point of 13%. And you're going to have to be very conservative to maintain and to, I guess, successfully get through that.
Yeah, if 100%. And so that's still over halfway to go, right? So the harder you push yourself up that climb, the more pain you'll feel the rest of the race. And so, one tip and guidance I would give you is use effort pace on your watch and really keep checking it on that section, because you don't want to jump into your tempo zone too much. You're just going to be burning through energy, and like you're going to be wearing down your muscles at a far faster rate. And so for you, 716 to 814 pace is really what you want to target. And that's going to allow you to run the most effective race over the full 50 miles.
Totally. That's
And
super.
it's really important to note, right? You might give up like let's say 5 to 10 minutes on the first 25 miles or the first 15 miles. You might give up some time, but where these races are either won or personal records set or great days had is in the last 10 to 15 miles. And in order to get to that point and having the ability to execute, you have to properly pace the first 35 miles.
Totally. And that's going to be a growth area for me and Lucas, both of us, we're both kind of in the mindset of like, let's just gun it. But I know for this particular race, you have to be very more conservative. And I'm very, very excited. Honestly, this conversation has given me more confidence to attack the race, knowing that I have an incredible technology partner working with me during it. So it's not just me going off feel. I'm actually can look at science. So I think that's going to be super helpful.
Yeah, and it's your taper week, so you have time, right? And
Yeah.
so I would tell you go onto our training blog at coros.com and find the Killian Jornet UTMB race analysis.
Okay.
It was an absolute clinic in how to properly pace a race. And I
Wow.
say that because he actually let the leader get about 30 to 45 minutes ahead of him at UTMB because he realized I can't sustain this pace for 19 to 20 hours. Like I can't do it. I'll have to give up. And so Killian made this is one of those decisions, right? He made this decision based off educated like processes internally. And
Sure.
so he made the decision to let Jim Walmsley go up the trail and get way ahead of him. And at one point, Killian was actually in third place, but he settled back into the zone he should be running at. And over the course of the next 10 hours, not only did he catch him, but he had the ability to surge on the final climb at like 16 minute per 5K pace, surge up the final climb because he conserved energy and ended up not only winning UTMB, but setting a course record along the way.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Those things matter, man. I think it really does. And it'll be cool to see how, yeah, you take those into account and just see what the outcomes speak for themselves. I think that's the big thing. Because obviously there's always going to be a mental component. You're going to have to battle, you're going to have to be tough. But if you can really be educated, I think it's more of a maturity, honestly, to accept and to seek out that information. I think that's just going to take you to a whole nother level.
Yeah. I mean, you can only do what your body can do, right? Like when you show up
Sure.
at the start line, you are who you are.
That's
Like
right.
you wake up in that morning, you look in the mirror and you're like, I know exactly who I am. And the best athletes, they stay true to themselves. Like, I hate to say it, Doug, but you're not going to run like Killian Jornet this weekend because
100%.
like that's just not
Are
who
you
you
sure?
are, right?
Even with
But
the data?
you're going to run better than I am, right? Because you've been training for this. So like what your training's been like, what your zones are, what your effort pace suggests it should be. Like, all these different features from the COROS training hub and the app. Like stay true to yourself, and that's how you really maximize your performance.
Totally. That's been super helpful, man. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to see how it goes, knowing all this information. And I'll be sure to share it with Lucas. He'll get to benefit secondhand from all my data.
Yeah, for sure. And so I'm gonna throw a plug in for COROS right now.
Please,
So
yeah.
so this is something that the industry has needed for a while, and getting to talk to you today and look at your data just like reconfirms our thoughts. But we are launching a COROS coaches initiative starting March 14th, to where anybody that has a COROS watch that wants to dig into their data and understand what it means at a deeper level can simply send us an email at coach@coros.com. We will dig into your data for you, send you screenshots, do a Zoom call just like this, help you understand it so that now you can become more educated, right? With this data, with your own abilities, so you can make better decisions in your training and your racing. And nobody has done this in the industry. Like this is a free service. It's a value add. But
Wow.
what we want to do is we truly want to educate athletes globally to be the best versions of themselves. And in order to do that, you have to understand what all these metrics mean.
Dude, that's so cool. Yeah, anyone listening, please go do that, especially if you're a part of the Chorus fam and have the watch. Because I mean, just alone, like again, I'm being dead honest when I say this. Like this episode has been more powerfully, I guess, valuable for me personally, and hopefully everyone listening is getting a lot from it too. But I think this is really, really interesting. What you guys are doing now and what you've built, but also the direction that you're headed. Because I can tell even from talking to you, and I know you're an extension of the greater team, which is incredible, but you guys seems like you'll have a mindset of truly wanting to push bounds and continue to evolve and continue to bring in more information, which, dude, that's exciting. That's really cool.
It is exciting. I was out at our headquarters last week, right? And we were having this conversation over lunch of it's like, why wouldn't you try to be the best that you can be in your position, right? And so we are all athletes, and I'm sure you had that mindset when you played college basketball. I had that mindset when I played college baseball, and when I was trying to become a pro triathlete and all that stuff. And now we're all past the athletic curve in our life of being pro, but now we've kind of all gone pro in our career. And it's like, why not be the best that you can possibly be? And that's really the entire culture at COROS is like explore perfection. That's our tagline. But to a person, like like I'm pumping up my colleagues right now, but they're really good. We
Yeah,
all want to
totally.
be the best that we can be. And what that's going to end up doing is going to drive the brand forward. And then most importantly, right? Like for all the listeners, that means the tech's going to be better. The wearables are going to be better. Like the education is going to be better. And hopefully at the end of the day, like athletic performance globally has improved.
Mm, so good. It's so good, man. I love it. I'm excited to continue to learn from you guys and whatnot. And honestly, it speaks another awesome, I guess, factor you could consider. People listening like that, just confirm credibility here is the incredible athletes that you work with. I mean, feel free to kind of plug some or mention some names. Obviously, my listeners probably are more, familiar with like a Brian Maz or Eric Hinman. My girlfriend's more in the running space. So like she loves Emma Coburn. Like she's, a big fan of hers. So like maybe talk about some of the athletes you guys have been fortunate to work with and why they choose to work with COROS when they could probably work with whoever they want.
Yeah, sure. So you called out Eric Hinman. In the strength space, we have Eliud Kipchoge, the greatest road runner of all time, Kilian Jornet, the greatest mountain runner of all time, Tommy Caldwell, perhaps the greatest big wall climber of all time. And so we have like Parker Stinson, Reed Fisher, Emma Bates, Molly Seidel, Ninka Brinkman. Yeah, it's just a lot of we get we have the opportunity to work with a lot of high quality like individuals and athletes. And what brings them to Koros is the simplicity. It gives you what you need, right? It operates at a really high level. Like the battery life, the user ease of use is very it's very good. And so on the back and what that allows us to do now is get their feedback on an even deeper level to tweak our technology, to tweak our interfaces to be even more productive for just all the average at home athletes like me or you, right? And
It's awesome.
so I don't like I don't mean to call you average or me average, but
Totally. No,
like talking about Eliud Kipchoge and Kilian Jornet versus
that was a
like
compliment.
others, right? It's like we want to make this as easy as possible for every athlete in the world, and by working with those athletes, it allows us to do that.
Totally, man. And I'm sure maybe not, but I'm sure there's some degree of like motivation internally from you guys to continue to push bounds and innovate and evolve because you getting an opportunity to work with some of these incredible athletes that are holding these high positions in their field, I'm sure puts not pressure on you guys, but just more extra excitement and motivation to continue to be that strong partner that's allowing them and supporting them in their journey of being the best at what they do.
Yeah, I mean, they have so much going on in their life, right? That they like we need to ensure everything is ready for them so they can go operate at their level. And so like Kipchoge's running Boston this year, right? He doesn't want to worry about if his watch like isn't fitting properly or if his data is not coming in correctly or his coaches don't want to worry about that. So it's up to us to ensure that everything is dialed in. And yeah, every day we go to work, we constantly have that mentality of like, let's get better today. Let's make sure our product is working for both the elites and the amateurs. And they continually motivate us to do that.
So cool, man. So cool, dude. I cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast. This has been honestly, like I've mentioned throughout, this is truly exceptional and just very, very valuable to me personally. But again, I'm excited for more people to hear more about what you guys are doing because it's super cool. And I think your commitment to the education piece of this brand beyond just how incredible the product is what really is going to set you guys apart and make that big global impact, like you mentioned. So, dude, Derek, thank you so much, dude. This has been a really fun episode.
Yeah, Doug, I appreciate it. Best of luck to you this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, for all of the listeners, check us out at Coros Global on Instagram, Facebook. You can go to coros.com, check out our training blog or the products that we have to offer. But more importantly, I look forward to hearing how you do, Doug. So keep me in the loop.
I absolutely will keep you in the loop, man. Do you have any kind of final words of advice or motivation or wisdom just as we sign off on this episode?
Everybody has to start their educational journey somewhere, right? Like, and you don't
Good.
have to nerd out on it day one because that's not the right approach at all. But what I would challenge all the listeners to is like each day you go for a run, try and explore one new feature of your data that you haven't before, because the more you start to get into this and the more you start to identify what this metric means in relation to this run, you're going to be in that position to make better decisions, and overall you're going to become a better athlete.
Let's go. I love it, man.
Let's go.
Such a good way to end the episode, man. Thank you, Derek. And I cannot thank the team enough at COROS just for the watch, obviously, and just this incredible opportunity to work together and just get so much value from what you guys are putting out.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.